Howians. Comics, cartoons and collectibles are all we need to survive here, which is kind of good because at King's Comics we've got plenty of them, don't we, Al?
Well, yes we do, but I think we may need a little more than that to survive. Maybe the occasional drink of water, something like that.
Really? Alright, well let us test your theory, Al. Would you prefer this cup of water or this comic?
Ooh, that's the new Talon. Comic.
Well, you can't have either of them because we have to do reviews of Snapshot and Global Frequency.
I bet Ray gets water.
No, Ray doesn't get any water either because he's bringing a very precious collectible in from his own collection for us to look at.
Okay, fine. Well, look, why don't you go get the copy of Fairy Quest so we can do the first review.
Yeah, alright.
So parched. Now you guys may remember that we had a bit of a conversation about crowdsourcing in the world of comics a couple of weeks ago, so we thought it might be a good idea to have a look at a title that comes from a background of Kickstarter for getting it going.
Yes, we did, sir. Fairy Quest Outlaws was launched through Kickstarter as a graphic novel and has now been serialized by Boom Studios. The story, written by Paul Jenkins, is set in Fablewood, a place where all of your favourite fairy tale characters live out the stories we all know from our childhood, and from Disney movies.
So far, so familiar. Obviously, fairy tales have become an incredibly popular backdrop for comics in the last few years, so we know what you're thinking. Don't think that, because they actually have come up with quite a fresh take on this.
Yeah.
Because not all of these characters want to be living out the same story day after day without deviation, because, well, why would you?
Yeah, but they really don't have a lot of say in the matter, thanks to their cruel overlord, Mr. Grimm.
Yeah, 2 M's, thank you very much.
Thank you, yes, and his Think Police, who issue reprimands for anyone who deviates from their story. And if you go too far off book, you get put in a machine and your mind gets erased. It's pretty harsh, and it's kind of bad news for Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf, who after centuries and decades of doing the same story have, well, kind of become really good friends, and they don't want to do this story anymore.
Yeah, so it's a setup for a really energetic story that smashes Hans Christian Andersen face first into George Orwell, and does it with a great deal of style thanks to Humberto Ramos's artwork. I mean, all these panels are just filled with motion and life and detail, and I think the characters are all really beautifully rendered.
Yeah, I think a bit of a shout out to Leonardo Olaya's colour work in this as well. It's really varied and very rich. Overall, I really enjoyed this story. I kind of want Boom Studios to get together with Jenkins and Ramos and go, let's do some more stories coming out of Fablewood, because it has that scope. It's definitely a buy from me, and it's also really nice to see that something of such high quality can come from crowdsourcing. It really does work.
No, I guess so. I mean, look, I really enjoyed it as well. I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. The first couple of pages, I was a bit iffy, but then as soon as Grimm, 2 M's, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
As soon as he shows up, I was actually quite hooked.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he probably could have come up with something a bit more imaginative than Think Police. You know, it's a little too close to George Orwell, Thought Police.
Yeah.
But that's a minor niggle.
It's just a small niggle.
Tiny little thing, and overall I did really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm going to give it a buy as well.
Great.
Autobots waging battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons.
The Transformers!
More than meets the eye!
So if you're a kid in the 80s or the early 90s, you probably know that song from the incredibly popular cartoon Transformers.
And if you didn't quite get it, I can sing it again.
Please don't, Ray.
But I won't.
Thank you.
No, but I could talk about the collectible.
That would be a good thing.
Okay, great. Well, Transformers is still one of the most popular cartoon franchises around, and beyond the comic books and the cartoons and the video games and more merchandise than you could store on Cybertron, collecting the Transformers toy line is big business. Now, the most sought after, arguably, is the Generation 1 Transformers, which are the original Transformers. They're called G1 for short, but there is a deluge of variants and reissues, spin-offs and custom makes available to you. But since 2003, Takara Tomy and Hasbro have redesigned the toys with the most popular characters in a masterpiece format. Now these toys are larger, they're more detailed, they're more complex to transform, which ultimately is much more fun.
Yep.
And they're also more posable as well than their original versions, but the appearances are kept as close as possible to the original cartoon or the original on-screen characters as possible. Yes.
Can we please talk about Soundwave now?
I was trying to build the
I
suspense.
know, but come on.
Okay. There we are. Soundwave with Laserbeak holding Megatron. Booyah. Counted among Megatron's earliest followers, Soundwave perpetuates his role as Decepticon communication specialist by virtue of Minicons, which stealthily infiltrate the fortifications of Autobots and Decepticons alike, enabling Soundwave to provide Megatron with even the most secret or obscure information.
This masterpiece Soundwave has an incredible likeness to the original cartoon and comic character designs. He has incredible articulation that surpasses any previous version. What I love is that you can angle the feet, so he's not only more stable, but it also gives him a more natural stance.
And there's a nice articulation in the hands too, and I like that only the index finger is separated while the rest of his hand sort of moves as one. It's great also that you can illustrate him pointing to his chest to call upon his Minicons, which is a reflection to what he does in the cartoon series. And speaking of which, I'm sure you've all spied Laserbeak there resting on his arm. Now he looks fantastic. I haven't seen a better Laserbeak ever. But what do you get with the MP13? Sonia?
Well, you get a couple of stack cards, a cassette case, Soundwave's weapon which can open up and be used. It can also be carried just like the scanner. Simply fold the hand aside and attach it. Little grid display that fits on his chest for alternate display, together with an empty Energon cube with a lid for when you need to store some away. The cube can also fit on his chest, and Megatron in gun mode, which you can reduce down into the short-range pistol.
But I know what you're all wondering. Does he transform? Hells yeah he does. And there you have it, Soundwave in blaster mode and Laserbeak in cassette mode. The player has a lot of details to it, a lot of extra buttons and switches, which, some of them actually functional, which is nice. And there's points where you think you could actually put your headphones in and that sort of thing. I think that's really, really good to see, that they've decided to add that extra detail. Can Laserbeak fit into Soundwave? Yes, he can. Can Soundwave multiple eject? Yes, he can. He can actually fit 3 Minicons in his chest at any one time, which means you could get a Ravage or perhaps a Rumble, the ones I would choose definitely, to get the iconic set. So, Sonia?
Look, I'm not a Transformer collector myself, I have to say. I am a fan, but I'm not a collector. But the make and model of this one is really quite great quality. Like, it's really high. The joints are all really solid. Almost so much so that I feel like I'm going to break him. Which would be a shame, but I know that I'm not going to. He's really posable as well, which is great. It means that you can muck around with his stance and you can make him look really statuesque, as well as, putting him in all his poses. Ultimately, he is a buy from me. I think he's really cool. Just, I think he'd look good on anyone's shelf, really. Yeah, absolutely. I get that feeling as well when I'm snapping him into place, though. That I wonder if I am going to break him. But I have to remember, he's a Transformer, and he's meant to transform. And if he were flimsy, I'd be really disappointed. He's the Takara model. The Hasbro hasn't been released yet, as of yet, but I'm sure it will come out very soon. Personally, I like the Takara models better. It's just a preference of mine. There's one thing, one little issue I have with this though, and that would be the index finger we spoke earlier about. It's sort of missing a pin at the end joint, and I'd be a little worried if you were, a little careless that it would fall off and you would lose that, and that would be a real shame. That said, the Masterpiece comes with a bunch of functional accessories, which they're not fantastic, but they're all usable. The best thing about it is Laserbeak, of course. I think he's reward enough. He is an expensive toy, and he's quite sought after as well. The pre-order list for Soundwave was very high, and Soundwave being one of the most popular characters in the cartoon series, you'd expect that he'll sell out quite fast. Yeah. But bang for your buck, absolutely. The design and just the sheer construction of him and how he transforms is really terrific. So it's a buy from me. Cool. Can I
transform him back again.
Yes, you can play with him again.
Yes!
But I might go and do another review.
Oh, that's cool with
Okay,
me.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But will take battle to destroy the evil forces. Do.
If you found a fancy-looking smartphone in the middle of a park and there's no one around, would you take it?
Depends. What kind is it?
Well, it's the kind that has its memory chock full of photos of a guy who's been shot in the head and his finger's been cut off.
I don't think that generally comes as standard. You know what? Probably best to leave it there.
Yeah, that's pretty much the conclusion that Jake Dobson comes to after he finds a phone which inadvertently makes him a witness to a murder, if indeed a murder happened.
Yeah, Andy Diggle really has laid down a bit of a twisty-turny plot in Snapshot, hasn't
Yes,
he? I mean, was there actually a murder? If there wasn't, why is an assassin now after Jake? I mean, if you're gonna take photos of a guy that you've just shot in the head, why leave it out in a park in your phone? Why not just post them on Instagram if you want somebody to see the pictures?
Well, look, I doubt very much that this is going to revolve around a group of hipster assassins.
Look, I put a filter on it. The bullet wound's oldie-timey now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
But this is a story that kind of relies rather heavily on its central mystery,
Yeah.
which is kind of good because I didn't really like any of the characters.
They are a bit stereotypical,
Yeah.
I'll admit, but that doesn't make them unrealistic.
No, not at all.
You know, it's honestly the thing I had a bit of a problem with was probably the artwork, which is strange because I mean, with Jock, I've liked some of his other work. You know, with like The Losers, obviously, and a bit of Judge Dredd. He's actually got some good work out there. But in this one, I don't know, it all felt a bit flat and a bit undetailed.
Yeah, there are a lot of blank backgrounds through this. There's a lot of white space. I mean, there's some nice composition. There's also some nice perspectives. This is kind of an odd title for me because it took me quite a while to get interested in what was going on. But by the end of the issue, I was desperate for the next one. Diggle and Jock have worked on some pretty impressive stuff in the past, but the jury is out for me whether this one's actually going to hold up against those works. Ultimately, I'm going to give this one a borrow, but it's going to be a wait for the trade borrow. It's only a 4-parter, so you don't have to wait long. It's fine.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think so much rests on the central conspiracy of this
Yeah.
story, as you say, that it's a little hard to give it a fair evaluation without knowing whether the payoff is going to be there.
Exactly.
I mean, certainly this one does leave you with a head scratcher at the end. There's a real cliffhanger, but is that enough? I'm really on the line on this one. I'm going to give it a borrow.
Okay.
But I reserve the right to tip that over into a berry if this mystery isn't worth the journey.
Yeah.
I will say one thing though. One of the things I really liked about it, Near Mint Rhino, that may be the coolest name for a comic book shop ever. So
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I did enjoy that.
Absolutely. We might take a look at it once it's in a trade. Excellent. Global Frequency was a series written by Warren Ellis that ran for 12 issues between 2002 and 2004. It was about a global rescue organisation with 1,001 members, all with dizzying talents, everything from computer hacking to parkour to parapsychology.
Yeah, and now it's actually been collected together in a single trade for release by Vertigo. So we thought it'd be a good idea to have a look at, just in case anyone missed it the first time round.
Yes, and honestly, I did.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, so I'm actually really happy that this has happened because it is such an excellent concept.
Yeah, and quite a fresh concept as well, oddly enough, given that, you know, from the inception of the story, it's around a decade old.
Yeah.
In many ways, I think Global Frequency breaks the rules of traditional comic book storytelling.
Yep.
For one thing, there is little to no through line between all of these stories, and for another, there are only actually 2 characters who feature in every story.
Yes, the enigmatic founder of Global Frequency, Miranda Zero, and Aleph, who's kind of a super tech switchboard operator who kind of keeps all of the agents in contact. She's pretty cool.
And oh, the dizzying variety of stories that we have here, the different situations they get into, everything from taking down a terrorist cell to fighting off a psychotic cyborg to preventing a sidelined military space project from depopulating Chicago.
Yes, and to accentuate that variety of story, we have a different artist for every one of them. Oh, the variety of flavours. It's Baskin-Robbins in graphic novel form.
It really is your sort of thing, isn't it?
really is.
Yeah, and look, in terms of the stories, what was your favourite artwork in which story?
Oh, it's really hard to choose one. I know. Okay, it's probably a toss-up between two of them. Big Sky, which is illustrated by John J. Muth. It's quite a rough visual style that was really quite evocative, and it made me feel really cold, which kind of works because it's set in Iceland, so that kind of works. But I also really loved Harpoon, which had art by Jean Ha. Completely different style, very much naturalistic, but the level of detail in that was absolutely incredibly crazy. It was amazing.
Yeah, no, those both were really cool. I do agree. I think my personal favourite though would have to be the issue that was illustrated by Lee Bermejo.
Yes.
Really, really good stuff. Incredibly disturbing medical science gone awry. There are a lot of people who can do that stuff, but he did it really well in this.
If these stories do have anything in common, it is probably that kind of science gone awry in a weird and wonderful way, whether you understand it or not. And usually under the direction of some government or other.
Yeah, there is that political aspect to it, isn't there? It's stated early on that they're at least partially funded, Global Frequency, by the G8 governments, who are just paying them on the quiet to keep their dirty little secrets, well, secret. I think this really could have gone somewhere interesting if it had continued. I love to think what could have happened with this story if it had gone on.
Yeah, there did seem to be a bit of cohesion happening towards the end of this, especially in the final story where two characters who we've been in contact with before show up again.
Yeah.
We also get Alepht's backstory, which was really cool and really quite fascinating. She was a very, very cool character.
Yeah.
I did also find out that there was a pilot that was shot of Global Frequency, but unfortunately it never got off the ground. Just such a shame.
It would have fit so well for that sort of serialized storytelling. Look, I hope they do resurrect that idea. I think it would have been great.
Yeah.
Obviously, Global Frequency is a buy from me. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I think some people may be put off by the lack of an overarching storyline, or in some cases by the crazy ultra-violence in some of these, because sometimes it does get pretty out there.
Yeah.
But honestly, if you like your scientists mad, and you like your bad guys literally riddled with bullets, then this may be one you want to check out.
Absolutely. The variety of story that's in here, the amazing artwork that's all the way through, and honestly, if you're not digging one of the stories, don't panic. Turn a couple of pages, you get to a new one with a new artist. So there's plenty there for everybody. I love this. I can't wait to go back and read this again. So it's a buy from me as well.
So that is all we have time for this week, guys. But as always, we have even more Kapow for you over at sftv.com.au. So head over there now, or, maybe save it for after dinner. Little treat.
That'd be nice. This week we take a look at Red Team as well as Son of Merlin. Now don't forget, Kapowians, our District 14 competition is still running thanks to Humanoids Publishing, but you do only have 1 week left.
Yes, so we'll be announcing the winner very soon. And don't forget, if you don't enter, Sonia gets to keep it.
That's right, so please don't enter. Right guys, until next week, bye.